Hi, welcome to Mercurius Being. This is Amy, and I am here to walk through the energies of the Cancer full moon, which is exact tomorrow, January 17th at 5:48 p.m. Central Time. So I'll just quick pop the chart up here. We've got the moon, kind of the handle of the bucket really, with the North Node Uranus being the edge of the bucket to the moon. And we've got the moon opposing the sun, obviously at the full moon, but we've got Pluto right in there with the sun. So the moon's also opposing that. So for me, I kind of went in the direction of this lunation highlighting a couple things. The degree the moon was at the solstice, so we're visiting kind of the solstice energies, and also a little preview into the US Pluto return, which will be exact in February. And of course, we're already feeling that energy, but this might highlight it a bit. All right, so the moon being at the same degree that it was at the solstice, and the solstice is 0 degrees Capricorn. So it was the beginning of Capricorn season back in December 21st. And the moon is the holder of memories. It's the reflector. It is the embodier. It is the accumulator of karma. So since solstice, it's gone completely one time, you know, kind of touching all the planets in the zodiac as it moved around and kind of accumulating that karma as it kind of moves through that, kind of touching every planet. So at this lunation, it's carrying, the last touch it had was Uranus up in Taurus. And we've just gotten through a year, and it's still active, of Uranus square Saturn, and I've talked plenty about that in other videos of that restructuring. So the moon is kind of still holding that Uranian energy of the unexpected, thinking outside the box, and it's holding that energy of kind of, you know, we could even say quick insights. The moon is, especially in Cancer, is all about imagination and play and creativity. And dreaminess. So kind of holding that energy of Uranus, the sudden insight into the sign of Taurus. Uranus is in, so the earth, the water elements of Taurus and Cancer working well together to bring in that kind of out-of-the-box thinking. And carrying that, the moon carrying that energy until the next time it touches a planet, which would be Mars and Sagittarius on the other end of the bowl shape. So kind of when it reaches there, having the energy to go forth with that and do have more energy for those insights. All right, so yeah, just them working well together. So I would say the Uranus energy of the mind, the mental energy, and really kind of like the channeling energy of Uranus. And then the moon being the embodier, okay. Like I said, imaginative and playful, but also like how do you feel it in your body? The moon and Cancer being the ruler of cycles and integrating it into your daily habits. So I guess I was thinking, you know, how do you feel at this time? How do you feel thinking about where you were at the solstice? So kind of having this be a meditation into embodiment. For what is alive in you. So what did you give space for at the solstice? Did you set some intentions? Did you think about, you know, it being the start of the new year astrologically, the darkest point of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere? What insights or feelings, you know, what started coming alive for you at that time? What was your yearning for the year to start? So for those of us in the US, this degree, you know, with Pluto, the Pluto return will happen at 27 degrees Capricorn. And right now transiting Pluto is at 26 degrees, but the sun and moon at this time are on that hot spot. They're on, the sun's at 27 degrees Capricorn, the moon's at 27 degrees Cancer. So as I said, highlighting it. So if you're here in the US, what your individual experience right now is, you know, still hooked into the collective, depending on how hooked into the collective you are. All right. So the U.S. will be looking into and exploring in greater detail and depth its shadow and its history. So I'm thinking that this is triggering our personal shadows as well, along with the Mercury Max elongation evening star, which we experienced, and I did a video on, was that just last week? Which is a perfect time for us to explore into the shadow and into all the old outworn, as I've talked about. So lighting the dark, seeing into shadow. And I just want to keep emphasizing, this could probably be the name of my channel now, naming and not blaming what we find in the shadow. Feeling and exploring, but not reacting. So, you know, how do you feel the moon in Cancer versus some pretty heavy hitters, the sun in Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn, and Capricorn's all about authority and the establishment and rules and regulations and corporations. The sun is authority, it's the king, it's the life force, you know, of our solar system. And Pluto is the god of the underworld. And I wrote down capo of the mafia, knocking at your door, coming to collect, okay? So kind of that image, which isn't a problem if you have the payment, right? Only a problem if you don't have the payment. So also that energy of, you know, that shadow that you can't avoid. If you've borrowed money from the mob, they will come to collect, right? But I want to reframe that and not to be such a scary term. As far as, you know, so I mean, the Cancer Capricorn, or the Cancer moon being such a dreamy, childlike energy, you know, and kind of feeling very vulnerable as I say that about Pluto Capricorn. But the moon Cancer is all about healing, and it is the handle of this shape. So it's got a lot of power. And so kind of taking it back into yourself, the healing, the intuitive, nourishing, nurturing, responding, reflecting, safety that we have by staying in one's own center. The flip side is kind of that Cancer being us versus them, the known, you know, your Cancer, your family, your people, so they're known, they're safe, and then anything outside of that is unknown and therefore unsafe. But that can be kind of scarring as well, because there can be forced compliance. Now I'm kind of on a mafia thing, you know, like if you're in the family, you're fine if you're playing by the rules, and if you're not, you're not fine, you're a threat. So with the last touch with Uranus in Taurus, I also kind of have this feeling about breaking it apart, restructuring, with no blame, okay? So everything is simply an experience. If we feel pain and discomfort, when the experience doesn't match our expectations. But if we're living in our expectations, we're not really living in our experience. We're in future world or past world, right? Instead of the present moment of our experience. So when we live into that experience in the present moment, we've got the potential to unfold in untold and delightful ways, just a myriad of possibilities in the present moment, because there's no expectation. We're not relying on the past form or the future structure. We're creating the structure as we go. It's like a little jazz riff, right? So the sun is also the symbol of creativity. It's the creative principle, the Aham Brahmasmi. It's the glyph of the sun is the same glyph as the cell. It's a circle with the bindu in the middle, symbolizes spirit. So the sun in Capricorn, what are we creating and what are we restructuring? We've got a few more degrees left here. In Capricorn, I mean, obviously the time for restructuring is any time, but really heightened and energetically supported at this time. The moon, the symbol for the moon, the glyph for the moon is the crescent of the mind. And it's also the soul. So it is about embodying. So really embodying this experience, right? And then Pluto is the chalice. It's the transmutative principle, transformative, deep, and sometimes ucky work. But without that work, it's only the surface level, and we're not really in it or in the process. And again, in that Capricornian structure. So this is an opportunity, as all full moons are, to hold the energy of opposites, the energy of the polarity, and to integrate those opposites. Now, we don't have to resolve the dissonance. You are increasing your capacity to hear dissonance or hear a wider range of tones, okay, to live in the unresolved. I'm just going to pull up, I've got my harmonium over here. I was going to mention this seventh. Okay, I'm going to do an octave. And then the dissonance of a seventh, which just kind of begs for resolution. But what if you just lived in that dissonance? You know, instead of asking for the resolution, like, oh, everything is resolved. But what about just living in the experience of the dissonance? I mean, that's a different experience, right? It doesn't kill you, right? You know, or start hearing microtones beyond dissonance, you know, like really dividing up the tonal scale into even smaller parts, right? So if we give up our reliance on resolution, that just gives us an invitation again to this multi-leveled, multi-layered, very nuanced experience of life if we're living in all shades of color and all shades of tone. It just enlivens, instead of going from black and white to even primary colors, to every shade and tone and hue, right? Okay, so that's where I'm going with in this full moon, guys. We're holding both sides of the polarity. We're going to prepare for this year's US Pluto return, and it's an invitation for you to really do your own work. The one great thing about Capricorn is like, grow up, right? It's time to be a grown-up and do the work and not push it off on somebody else's plate, because no matter what else is going on in the world or in the United States or in any situation, whether it's work or family or relationships, we can always do our own work. We can always work with our own internal dissonance and resonance. And then we become truly alive within ourselves. And then once you're truly alive within yourself and making peace and balancing all those aspects, the other parts kind of fall into place. We can throw out the old authority and old authoritarian modes and becoming Capricornian, coming into your own authority and your own kind of right relationship to authority. So it's a wonderful opportunity for a radical restructuring of your consciousness, and an invitation to not just keep sleeping through it. You can dream through it a little bit, but then take those dreams, those Cancerian dreams and imaginings, and implement them. So an invitation to dive into the murky abyss and prove to yourself that you can swim in the deep water.